like to open up the audit committee meeting for November 26th. We have any public comments?
No.
None? Okay, I need approval of minutes. Can I get a motion? John? Give me a motion. Second? Second. All in favor? We're all in favor. Okay, the work plan. I think there's a few notes. The work plan is included in the agenda book. Please note there's no meeting scheduled for December. The next meeting is scheduled for January 2013, at which time the results of the 2012 third quarter financial statement review will be done. The pension audits will be done. The status of the 2012 audit plan and the proposed audit plan for 2013 will be discussed. In addition, the committee is advised that a total of 4 meetings are scheduled for 2013.
Correct.
Okay, review of our audit committee charter. You're on.
Each year, the audit committee is required to review and assess the adequacy of its charter. The staff is not making any recommendations regarding changes to the charter at this time. No vote is required.
No votes required.
No, we're not recommending any changes.
Okay. Okay, you're on again. Compliance with the Internal Control Act.
Okay. Each year we go through a process by which we determine whether or not the MTA and each of its agencies is in compliance with the requirements of Public Authorities Law Section 2931 or the Internal Control Act. Again, this year we have gone through that process and are in the process of preparing a report, which we will send to you when it's completed. I'm happy to say that the MTA and each of its agencies are in compliance with the requirements of Public Authorities Law Section 2931.
Okay. I think you're on again.
Last November, the board approved the new Enterprise Risk Management Internal Control Guidelines. Article 3 of those guidelines require that the committee annually review those guidelines. Article 3 also requires that the Enterprise Risk Management Internal Control Committee provide you with, in advance, any recommendations that we might have to ensure that those guidelines maintain compliance with the requirements of the Act as well as internal control standards. We have no recommendations regarding revisions to the guidelines at this time.
Okay. Okay, David. You can come up, or David will brief the committee on overall audit approach for 2012, year-end audits, and the MTA for the MTA and its agency. In addition, he will tell us any impact of new or proposed changes and accounting principles or regulations to that reporting.
I'd like to start once again with I'm going to start with the most important person first, the person that's handing out the handout for you. That's Jill Strohmeyer. She is a senior manager. She's responsible for the overall audit of the authority. You know, she leads the day-to-day activities and ensures that the audit plan is you know, being undertaken appropriately and that issues are addressed as they come due. Then you have Darshan Patel, who is also a senior manager, but he's the guy responsible for a number of the agencies, but most importantly, he is the federal single audit compliance specialist. As a matter of fact, he acts in that role in the firm as an assistant to me. He deals directly with the federal agencies. He is responsible for that piece of the audit that basically looks at the federal grant processes and makes sure that, you know, that the authority is in compliance with the provisions of the grants. The person next to him is Mike Malloy. He is an audit director, and he's responsible for and the various agencies within the authority, including the Transit Authority, CERTOA, the pension plans. Glenn is basically everything that is responsible for everything that Mike doesn't do. You guys know Glenn. He's a partner on the account for a number of years. And then, I lead the effort for the firm. We have sent to you previously an email. Now, we didn't share it with management because it does include our audit plan, and it does talk about some of the things that we look at on a particular detailed basis. And it actually gets in a little bit to some of the things that we rotate in and out of the audit, and we don't necessarily believe that that's appropriate to share with management. I would like to remind the audit committee about our approach to the audit. I mean, it really does start with kind of understanding and knowing the business, each of the businesses of the authority, and based on that understanding, we track. We have press clippings, we have other sources of public information that we assess throughout the course of the year to basically help us understand any issues or potential issues that could exist. We're here a lot. We correspond with management a lot. Of course, we have the quarterly reviews of the financial statements that cause us to be here. But recently, you guys have been in the public markets a lot, and as a result of that, we are, we really have spent a lot of time. So, there's a lot of information to our disposal to help us understand and develop potential plans for the audit. Once we do that, we basically spend a lot of time looking at the systems of controls. We do use a control reliance approach. We do understand the system of internal accounting controls, look at the process that management, and by the way, you use to, and again, we're primarily focused on two things. In the government, it's a little different. We're focused on the fact that there are controls that are appropriate to produce reliable, accurate financial information. And then there's also, because you're a government, one of the things that makes government accounting a little different than the private sector, maybe the one material thing, is that your financial statements are also intended to demonstrate compliance with any finance-related legal requirements, and that's your bond indentures. And, the state also has certain restrictions and limits on the type of financial activities that you can undertake. So those financial statements are intended to do that, and we also, as part of our audit, build in audit procedures to review the processes that you have in place to ensure that, and to confirm our understanding of your processes to make sure that they're working appropriately. After we go through the process of understanding what's happening with the authority, any changes in the authority and the system of internal accounting controls, we undertake a risk assessment. And that's a fairly detailed process. That really consists of all of us involved in the engagement, sitting around the room for a long while, talking about what potentially, a couple of things. It talks about what could be what issues could cause potential misstatements in the financial statements that would be material. And remember, we focus on materiality. Now, our materiality is pretty low to begin with, and to be quite honest with you, we've lowered it again because it was some of the things we were talking about before. I mean, we've had a change in our audit processes, and one of the big things with that is the change in the level of materiality, which means the level of testing that we do is a little more than it has been in the past. Actually, it's a little more, but it's not, there's more looking at the details of transactions than we have in the past. Once we undertake the risk assessment, and that's some of the things that I want to talk to you about, in the items, we identify accounts that we believe are particularly sensitive to potential for misstatement. Generally, those are issues that relate to either very complex types of transactions or judgments. You know, things that aren't, you know, the day-to-day type of transactions. Actually, to be honest with you, we look at your payroll process, and it's a process that's going on. It's subject to a normal recurring process that has a system of controls, system of reviews. One of the things that we pay particular attention to and we audit the hell out of, to be honest with you, is your journal entries. I mean, journal entries are those items that generally are non-recurring in nature, not necessarily. They are subject to a process of review, but a less process than a normal day-to-day activity. And they generally relate to a judgment or some event. So we pay particular attention to those, and I'd say we virtually look at all your journal entries. Items that have, you know, a lot of judgment in them, like post-retirement benefits expense, has a lot of judgment that appears within those, involves some judgments. We'll pay attention to that. Valuation of investments, you know, has some judgment in it, and we'll pay some attention to that. The big one's claims and judgments, and it has a whole lot of judgment. And we spend, starting this Thursday, holding a series of meetings that include the general counsels from all of the agencies. We go through a pretty detailed process with them and, you know, their actuarial advisors to understand the process, to look at the individuals, and we go through a number of individual cases and discuss the details of those. And we'll continue to do that throughout the audit process. If you will look, and I'm not going to talk about all those, starting on page 7, we talk about the risk assessment. And if you'll look at some of the items that we have listed in there, you know, I mention it just because it is, you know, it's a new accounting issue. If you look at derivatives, we consider derivatives by their nature to be a risk item, only because of what they are. And the accounting for those are complex. They are accounted for as a hedge, which is complex. There is, once you have hedge accounting, you have declared hedge accounting, there has to be a measurement of effectiveness, and we look at that. So we'll spend, you know, a good bit of time again. And by the way, we do that on a quarterly basis. Anyway, so you know, we've looked at what the authority's doing, and we will continue to do that, you know, and challenge those processes. The other post-employment benefits, I mean, we will have our actuaries spend a lot of time with the actuaries with Milliman. To be quite honest with you, that's a pretty rigorous process. And, you know, there's a lot of professional types of, I wouldn't call them disagreements, but there's a lot of, you know, basically hard conversations that occur between them. And actually, I'm going to tell you, I've watched that process for years. I think sometimes it's just, you know, the actuarial science is not exactly exact. But these guys figure it out, and they always come to a conclusion. One of the biggest things that we will do, in addition to having, you know, our experts independently review the work of your experts, is we do go through and detailed test the information that's been given to the actuary to make sure that it's accurate and complete. Let's see, we've talked about estimated claims and judgments. Inventories. I put it on there because, you know, while it's not a big deal in and of itself all the time, there are some sensitive things in there. And it's not that it's, you know, to be honest with you, in the aggregate, it's not particularly material, but it's a little bit sensitive. And we do, on a cycle basis, do fiscal observation of the inventories taken at the authority.
Just to add, because of the hurricane, there has been some loss in inventories.
Yeah, I think you've written, I think a lot of that was written off, but we'll certainly look at, you know, what happened as a result of the storm and make sure that, you know, items that were damaged were appropriately taken care of. The big thing I want you to focus on is on fare and ticket revenue. And I'm going to focus you, page 10, I want to focus you on the final. One of the things that we do that's probably unbeknownst to you, but we actually purchase tickets for for each of your modes of transportation, and we have people, use them, log them. Then we take the results of those, and by the way, there's quite a few of them. There's of those tickets that we purchase, and they're all throughout the year. And then we will basically test them into the details of the system. We also look at the cash two ways. We look at cash that's collected, and it's a little difficult to do, to be quite honest with you. Now, for very active stations, cash is collected daily, goes to account room, it's deposited. For lots of reasons, there are some stations that don't get a lot of cash, and as a result, their cash is not collected as frequently. Sometimes it's monthly, depending on, where it is, and there's a decision to do that, but now it's always kept in a locked place. But getting that cash to the bank, if you select one of those stations and one of those, and we do it by station and shift, requires a good little bit of effort. Then we also look at it from the bank back to the machines to make sure that money went into the bank, went through the machine of some sort. So we look at it what's called cradle to grave and grave to cradle to do that. And as a result of that, now we're basically just relying on the system. And then we go through a fairly detailed analysis, statistical analysis, analytical review. We independently establish expectations based on what we've seen during the year and the quarters. Do our own calculation of what we think revenue should be for the year for the various modes of transportation, and then compare it to what you have. And if there's a difference, then we look for what created the difference and what events are causing the difference. And every now and then we have one. We know we're going to have one this year that we're going to look for, right? That will show up because of the storm. We know statistically that will impact, and will impact ticket revenues. I would also say that because of the storm, we will look at, any potential issues that would be related to that, whether, and to be quite honest with these auditors, we're primarily focused on impairments. We don't see any big items that you haven't noticed anything. There's probably a few, other than some of the inventory issues, but we haven't seen anything that leads us to believe that there are material impairments, but nonetheless, we'll go through the process of looking at that to make sure that if there are, that the authorities have accounted for them. As it relates to the recoveries, we will look to make sure that where you have booked a loss, that you have, a contractual commitment to be paid for those losses. As it relates to business interruption, there's a different accounting pronouncement. One of the things we'll look at is to make sure that piece of business interruptions handled appropriately. The rules on business interruptions say thou shalt not recognize a recovery until they have a written agreement with the insurer to pay, and that includes FEMA. So, if you just have an estimate of revenues without an agreement, you really can't book the receivable. That ends my formal. Now, there's a lot more in there that I encourage you. I think you've already had the opportunity to look at it. I encourage you to look at at the details of it, and certainly if you have any questions, we'd be glad to discuss them. I will tell you the audit's an immense effort. There are a lot of people involved. There are a number of engagement teams. We probably have a total of about 40 people that participate in the audit during its process. And as always, we'd like to hear from you about if there's any particular issues that we should focus on during our audit that you'd like for us to focus on.
I had a chance to go through it because I got it last week. And it really is something that I think most of our members should look through, because it really gives an outline of how you perform your work, we see, from a committee standpoint, you coming in, giving us the results,
Right.
so this
And
really
then, by the way,
gives
it's
you-
not complete. That's just an example. I mean, I just pulled examples, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that you're a fairly complex organization, and you have some complex transactions. I will tell you, your revenue accounting system is as complex as any organization that you're ever going to find, particularly for the transit authority. I mean, it is really, a really complex system. So it requires a good bit of effort and understanding to understand that system and test the system, make sure that it's producing appropriate results.
Now, the only question that I have regarding this year's audit, and that is the accounting records of Sertoa. Since we had a problem with them last year, we'd rather not have a.
So would we, we've had conversations with them, and the answer is that the transit authority's taken over that process, and it's actually Mike Mentel's leading it. He's on top of it. It's probably not going to be as timely as we'd like for it to have, but it's not going to be like it was last year, where they just can't do it at all. That's probably what I would say, but I think it's.
I think, David, maybe when you come back in January to do the third quarter, you can give a little update to the committee just to make sure there are no surprises that are going to occur in April or May.
The only thing, by the way, it's material to Sertoa. I heard
Correct.
Mark talk about. It's the one thing is it's not particularly material to the MTA as a whole, but it is material to Sertoa, right? And you guys, you've chosen to have individual financial statements for each of your components, and therefore it's material, right? To have, timely, accurate information, because the absence of one always casts, even though it's not material, basically casts a pall over things. So you're better off having it done. Now, since we're talking about it, at some point in time, you really, and there may be some city compliance issues with it, but sometimes you'd ask yourself, really, why do they, Sertoa, need audited financial statements? That's a different discussion, different thing, but if it's the policy to have them, they should have them.
So, come January, maybe when you give us that,
I'll do that.
just give us a
we'll
little
do
update
that.
as to where that is, so we can be prepared.
Oh, in the event that they're not ready. Well, we're hopefully not gonna have that.
Any questions? No?
Is there anything that, no concerns?
After looking through
Anything that
this,
you guys have heard during, your processes? I know a lot of you sit on other committees and probably see other things that you'd like for us to pay particular attention to.
It was very comprehensive, so.
Okay.
Approach is
Thank
very
you.
comprehensive.
And as always, if there's some issue that we need to talk to you about, we'll talk.
okay.
David, I have one.
Sure.
Is there anything on the horizon, changes that are being discussed in the auditing community that would be applicable
The
to an
only,
organization like ours?
I mean, there's always the auditing, there's been some pretty material changes in the auditing standards recently that we've already probably dealt with. Nothing in the recent, standards that's there. The GASB has got a few things that's not really earth-shaking. The only thing that's really material going on right now is the SEC activities around municipal securities. That's real, and that's continuing. There's a big focus on that right now. Even with Mary Shapiro leaving, I think there's still a lot of interest these days down there. And to be quite honest with you, I talked to them. The chief accountant is a former partner from Deloitte. He's actually coming back to Deloitte. And he, because of that, he has talked to me a good bit over time, and I've also, spent time with the chair because she knows me, and I've never seen them quite as interested as they have been in the issue. And it's more about timeliness. It's what their timeliness of disclosures of events that they're concerned about.
Well, I've noticed their concern.
I know you've noticed their concern. But that's a big thing. I actually, when I see that, there's, since I've been around a long time, they've always talked about the need for more uniformity, more timeliness. But there's never, the states have always had the ability to basically continue to argue interstate commerce, all those things that the states have done. I was actually one of them and did it, right? But with some of the events that have occurred in the last few years have basically, and with what happened, what happened in the financial markets, what happened with WorldCom and Enron, and the events of the day has gotten everybody focused. And then you have what the SEC, and I'm not sure what their purview was with what happened in the Alabama thing, because I'm not so sure that was necessarily a disclosure issue. That was just that was a business decision. And I don't know what disclosure would have done, but nonetheless.
Legalities there.
Right. No,
there
that's
are
my point.
complexities.
But then they've looked at at a few other places, and New Jersey being one. And looked at pension disclosures and basically issued cease and desist orders, which is just they've done. So I think that's them demonstrating they're serious about doing it. And there is some legislation. I don't know if you guys have seen it. There is some model legislation. There's a proposal floating around Congress that would allow the SEC to regulate municipal securities. So that's what's going on. That's the biggest issue.
Okay. I thank you.
Thank you.
My mind, you're on again.
Well, I'm actually quite happy to say that working with Audit Services, we have reviewed the open audit recommendations, and I'm happy to say there are none that have exceeded the 6-month period beyond their implementation date. So we have none to report today.
Full compliance.
Wow, that's great. Took a long time to get there, but we got there.
Yeah, there's definitely motivation now.
Yeah. That's right.
We will.
Okay, now we have information technology reports. I think everyone's received a copy in the mail, and it was prepared by the agency's chief information officers. And it really is an update on the actions taken to address the system security and control issues raised.
Good afternoon. As you indicated, Chairman, the MTA Chief Information and Technology Officers prepared this report as an update to the Audit Committee on IT initiatives underway, ongoing oversight and actions to secure our computing environment, and other key system strategies that are being employed across our MTA family. Hurricane Sandy has refocused our attention on risks to IT services and operations. What were earlier lower probability events have become real vulnerabilities that we need to invest time and resources to address going forward. The earlier data center strategy of consolidating multiple data center operations at 2 Broadway is being reassessed. And alternatives that provide superior resiliency are being actively pursued with MTA Real Estate and New York City Transit Material. Nonetheless, the initiatives described in this report will continue to deliver benefits even if data center operations are modified from our prior plan. In 2010-2011, our primary focus has been on understanding the factors that contribute to our costs and to our efficiency. And to that end, I have briefed you in prior years on 6 work streams that have contributed significant savings. I'm very proud of the progress we've made so far. On 4 out of these 6 work streams, we've completed all of the work, and I'll go into detail. The total savings over 5 years, starting from 2011 to 2015, is $71 million. 2 of these initiatives we have always understood to be multi-year initiatives. Those are application rationalization and data center strategy. Those are still ongoing. Again, as I mentioned, with the last hurricane, we are reassessing our data center posture, but we're making a lot of progress on application rationalization, especially with the BSC going live with release 2 of their services. The work streams that are now completed are the wide area data network and voice communications rationalization. We have eliminated 1 of the 2 wide area networks, and we've migrated from a legacy internet service provider T3 circuit to new internet service provider circuits at 2 Broadway. We've made our infrastructure simpler and more efficient in that sense. With IT security monitoring, we have redesigned our monitoring center at New York City Transit to handle work for MTA HQ, PD, the BSC, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, Capital Construction, and MTA Bus. We've canceled costly third-party vendor contracts to perform these services, and we're achieving savings that way. That work stream is now completed. Email as well has been consolidated on 1 platform. All agencies but 1 are being serviced by New York City Transit. Long Island Railroad has some very important TCU labor rules that requires the work to stay at Long Island Railroad, and we've mitigated that by leaving the infrastructure for Long Island Railroad over there. Again, that has been completed. The help desk and desktop support work stream has benefited from a contract we have with Unisys, which is much more efficient than us providing the work in-house. And for HU, PD, and MTA Bus, we have all migrated to that contract, and agencies that could not, for either business reasons or labor reasons, have found savings somewhere else in their help desk work stream and contribute to our bottom line savings. We've also taken advantage of strategic sourcing successes. Working with McKinsey, we've identified a large number of employees who had both a desktop and a laptop computer. We've recovered 1,000 of those, either desktops or laptops, and 23% of those devices have been redeployed to other employees. Agency CIOs have worked together to come up with a list of standard equipment, so we all buy the same 2 flavors of desktop, high-end and middle-end laptop, as well as desktops, so that we can take advantage of volume discounts. And based on that, MTA HQ procurement was able to get a 51% discount over OGS rates. And finally, we've audited our mobile phone usage, and we've identified 4,160 phones that were being used in a very light way, and we've canceled those services. 40% of those actually were eliminated based on a thorough review. The others were deemed to be highly critical, so even though they were not heavily used, they were needed in case of emergencies, and those were kept. Also noteworthy is the Business Service Center, which went live with Release 2 on July 2nd. New York City Transit and MTA Bus now have 45,000 employees who are being processed in the Business Services Center for both payroll, benefits, and other features of the human resource side. Financials were already part of Release 1. Even though efficiency is very important for us, a survey of CIOs worldwide have indicated that cost cutting is not the be-all and end-all in IT. We need to be able to deliver on strategic initiatives as well. To take a quote from the survey, which included 2,335 CIOs representing 37 industries, this is the quote, while present economic conditions may tempt CIOs to focus solely on cost cutting, senior executives expect technology to address the tough challenges by amplifying enterprise strategies and operations. And to my understanding, that means that we are responsible to promote the services that the MTA delivers to its community. To that end, the MTA website remains a cornerstone of our public information and communication strategy, and it proved vital to the local economy during Hurricane Sandy. A year-long collaboration effort between IT and corporate communications to streamline the content and the workflow as well as the infrastructure, allowed us to stay 100% up during the storm. Our loads on the website were 200 times normal loads, and we were able to handle all requests coming in using the cloud. Transparency and website improvements from across the MTA provide a flavor of what we've been doing. At New York City Transit, the A Division line feed is going to be released soon. Information displayed on New York City Transit's countdown clocks will soon be made available on MTA Info, on-the-go kiosk, and station display screens as an app for the iPhone and as a GTFS feed for external developers so that they can provide apps to the public. Trip Planner Plus on MTA.info is alive and well. Now you can do cross-system trips using that tool. Long Island Railroad has an enhanced train reporting system. It provides additional train reporting information to customer signage and customer-facing applications by adding automated track sensor timings between Atlantic Terminal and Jamaica Station, as well as in the East River tunnels. MNR has the VIS expansion and employee dashboard. MNR expanded the VIS to various stations this year, including Grand Central, Croton Harmon, Poughkeepsie, North White Plains, Tarrytown, and New Rochelle. The same information is now shared with the frontline as well, frontline staff. Travel time and signage apps at bridges and tunnels are also available. B&T IT staff have developed mobile apps that deliver real-time travel time across crossings for bridges and tunnels, as well as times they can expect to reach other important destinations, such as airports and New Jersey bridges. At headquarters, we had an apps contest. We had 442 enrollees who developed apps. Some of them are for free, some of them are paid apps. And right now, as of last count, I counted over 50 iPad and iPhone apps and many Droid apps as well, all of them available to the public and access our information. We also have advanced tracking and customer information systems that went live recently. We have MTA Bus Time. Bus Time uses wireless GPS to track real-time locations of buses. From a desktop or a smart device, customers can enter a bus route, intersection, or a bus stop, and the application will display when the buses are along the route and how many stops away the bus is. Bus Time was rolled out to Staten Island in January this year and to the Bronx earlier last month. Bus stop customer information signs also use the same information as Bus Time and is also available at certain bus stops. MTA security oversight is very important to us. We have a security officers committee that meets regularly. It discusses vulnerabilities in the agencies and along the perimeter, and we focus on HIPAA and PCI compliance. This is the year, or last year was the first year that the MTA as a whole submitted a gap report to the Office of State CIO, and we've identified some vulnerabilities and learned some lessons from that. This year, I think we're going to do very well with reporting our vulnerabilities because we've mitigated some things such as educating our own employees about cybersecurity risks so that they do not fall victim to any of those social engineering attacks or other attacks. In terms of key control areas, the IT governance process is alive and well. Projects that exceed $1 million or have multiple up to 5 years for completion go through an IT governance process. There's a governance committee that is staffed by executives from all of the agencies, not HQ. We only have one member from HQ, but senior executives review return on investment, benefit to the MTA, and strategic importance to the MTA before a project can even start. In the past year, 2 proposals were presented to the committee and subsequently approved. These proposals were the replacement of the outdated Transit Adjudication Board information system and the proposed implementation of an alternate desktop solution. That's the Think Client at New York City Transit. I'm joined here by MTA CIOs who are able to answer any questions that you may have.
You have any questions? Just one question. In light of the hurricane, how about disaster recovery? Did everything work?
We've learned some really hard lessons during the disaster recovery after the storm and during the storm. As I mentioned before, 2 Broadway was kind of a cornerstone of the R plan. We were going to actually move data centers into 2 Broadway, and we discovered that 2 Broadway had a vulnerability in the basement, which is being addressed as we speak. However, we are taking a look at every tier of technology from the mainframe to the PeopleSoft mid-range to other mid-range systems and other applications, and finding out whether we need to find a better location for them and have a redundant DR depending on the criticality of each system. We have a committee that Bob Bergen is heavily involved in because a lot of the systems at 2 Broadway belong to Transit, as well as HQ. I'm very involved in that. And we have practically been meeting almost daily, Sid, myself, and other CIOs, to take a closer look at what are the drivers for each system and where is the best location for each system. And we're not thinking of this as one size fits all, meaning the mainframe does not have to be next to PeopleSoft, does not have to be next to the capital program systems. Depending on each system's criticality during a storm or even a safety event, we need to be able to recover business as quickly as possible. One of the toughest lessons, I think, was email. We lost email operations for about 3 days. And right now, there's a team that's dedicated to setting up a a warm recovery environment between Livingston Plaza and 2 Broadway. Should we lose any one of the 2 sites, we will be able to recover from the other site. The long-term strategy is to serve email from the cloud. We're evaluating as well with a smaller committee of users who can assure that the quality of the email experience does not deteriorate, but the resiliency of having it away from the region would be helpful, especially when we have a disaster.
Okay, very good.
Just with respect to security, how do you know what standards are appropriate for redundancy and sufficient hardening of the sites and what you were talking about off-site use of the cloud?
Yeah.
How do you know what standards to apply?
Right. I'll answer. I think there are 2 questions. One is security itself, and how do we make sure that we're following the right standards in making our environment secure? But in terms of making it recoverable, both for IT and for the business, what standards we use for that as well. So let's start with the first one. We work very closely with the state CIO's office. There's a whole list of hundreds and hundreds of criteria for compliance, and we rate ourselves against those every single year. Agencies report their ratings up, self-reported to us at HQ. We compile everybody, and we develop kind of an action list for the following year. Each CIO completes those, and so on and so forth. Every time those standards change, we discover new vulnerabilities and we close the gap. So it's one of those things that is more of an ongoing, good housekeeping kind of responsibility that we adhere to. In terms of recoverability, we work with the business users of each application to determine the criticality of the application to the business. IT does not make those decisions, does not make those calls. If an application needs to be recovered right away, like a payroll application, or in this case, let's say an email application, we get that feedback from our customers. We prioritize that application as well. And so for email, it is quite justifiable to have redundancy or even to look at the cloud solution. For a system such as, I will use a system I'm familiar with, a system that we use to rate our contractors, our capital program contractors. It's called ACE. And when a contractor is falling behind, we give them bad ratings. If a contractor is delivering really well, we give them good ratings. When we have an incident like Sandy, or an event like Sandy, that system does not have to be up until we totally recover. So those would be rated low, and we don't necessarily have to have a warm backup. We need to have tape backup of the data. So if we need to, we can buy new equipment and we can recover somewhere else. So there's a whole range. We have about 600 applications at the MTA. Each one has a rating. Some have not been rated yet. We're working to rate those. And we deliver a strategy based on our cost constraint and the need to the business for the business to recover quickly when needed.
Okay, great. Any
Great,
questions? We have any questions for the representatives, various agencies? No? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
And our next meeting is January, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Jonathan?
They're adjourned.
Jonathan, Joseph to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.